CDM Electronics presents training on Times Microwave Products, Part 3 of 4.
Omar 600, we sell more of the 400 than anything else because it's just a very common size for the lower frequencies. But the LMR 600 is very popular also. We compare this to half-inch corrugated cable or a product called Andrew Superflex, and you can see from the chart up there, it's very comparable to the corrugated cable. This is just a chart of loss at 900 megahertz dB per 100 feet. So we're 2.5 versus 2.2. Andrew's got this much more expensive product called Superflex. It's a lot more flexible than their regular coaxial cable half-inch, but the loss is a lot higher, so we're a lot lower loss than that. So this is a good jumper cable or short tower feeder cable. Again, on the infrastructure side, any place you're looking in those markets that we're talking about, this is a pretty popular cable. That's just the loss chart. Here we're just trying to show that we're very comparable to the other cables that are out there. If you're trying to convert somebody over from an Andrew cable, and they're going to be mainly concerned about loss, because if they're already using corrugated cable, they're probably used to the fact that it's not flexible. But if you're trying to sell them on going over to an LMR cable, you really got to be talking to them about loss and show them that the loss is pretty comparable. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to when you get down to LMR 1200 and 1700, because we don't sell a lot of that. I don't think you guys have sold a lot of 12 and 1700 cable. And the reason we don't sell a lot of those big sizes is because those are the size cables that they use on the cellular towers. And it's such a big market that it's like super competitive. And even if they would use LMR cable, which they're not prone to use an LMR, they're just used to corrugated cable, it's such a bad market that we wouldn't even want to be in that market. I mean, these guys, they fight over like pennies in this market, and they kill each other to get an order, and that's not what we do. And let's talk about the connectors for a second here. We've got all the different interfaces. If you look in the catalog, you can see all the different types of connectors that we've got. And if somebody asks you for a connector and you don't see it on our price list or you don't see it in the catalog, it's always a good idea to contact us, Brian, because we might have it, but it might not have been a popular enough connector that we wanted to put it out in the price list or in the catalog. But we might have it. So just if you don't see it, just check with us, and it might be something we either have or would be willing to do if it was enough volume. We also try to, if you're selling it out into the infrastructure market and people are building their own cable assemblies out there, you always want to try to get to use the EZ connectors, because there's no soldering required. They go on a lot easier. They're great connectors for using out in the field. And when you're selling the tools to people, I don't know if you guys do this. I'm sure I must have mentioned it before, but we've got the crimp tools, we've got the strip tools, we've got the cutting tools and all of that. But basically, somebody who's going to be doing this out in the field, they're probably going to need all the tools. So you want to try to sell them the tool kit. And I mean, it's a better sale for you guys, but you're really doing them a favor because you give them everything at once that they're going to need, just to show, how robust they are. I guarantee if you cut anybody else's connector in half, that like a third-party connector for our cable, you just don't see the same features in there, and the same quality level of the connectors. These things are built to last. People never call us with connector complaints. I got to tell you, Joe Lanou, he's our product manager for our stuff. He sits in the office next to me, and I can hear every conversation he's got in his office next door. And I've been sitting next to that guy for like 13 years, and just nobody ever calls him with like problems on connectors. It's amazing. When they call and I hear them talking about a connector problem, it's because one of two things: either they used somebody else's connector, or they didn't put the connector on right. And then he'll just kind of walk them through that. Product, LMR SW. What SW stands for is smooth wall. Okay, and low PIM is, I don't know if you guys have heard this term or not, passive intermodulation. If that's anything
from you.
From me, okay. Okay. Well, if you get into the infrastructure market, one of the things that is of growing concern now, especially with the cellular carriers, is a phenomenon on cables or at the site called intermodulation. What happens on these systems is they'll wind up getting enough interference on the cable, in the cable, or between cables, okay, And a lot of these cables that are on the cell sites are what they call transmit and receive. They're doing double duty. They're not just the transmit cable or receive cable. So if there's interference between components in the cable, what you can wind up with is a number of things happen, and you get the old drop cell phone call, you get the noisy cell phone call, or you get the hated, I'm hearing my echo coming back to me a fraction of a second later cell phone call. Honey, let me call you back and see if I can get a better connection. So, and the carriers hate this stuff, because if you're an AT&T customer and this is happening to you a lot, what are you going to do? I'm going to Verizon because AT&T is terrible. I'm not going to use them. So the carriers, because they're all competing with each other for basically the same customers, they keep trying to provide better and better service. Okay, so they want to eliminate these kinds of things. Now, what gives rise to this thing of intermodulation or this interference? If you have a connector on the cable that's loose and the connector is moving a little bit with respect to the shield that it's terminated to, it'll actually generate another signal, and that's one of the problems. On the LMR cable, I was saying why the carriers don't like to use standard LMR cable at the cell site. What do we have in the LMR cable? We got the foil and we got the braid. Okay, and what else? What do you have on a cellular tower? Wind. Okay, so all you need is a little bit of movement of that cable around, and I mean it wouldn't be anything that would be visible to the naked eye, but that braid can move a little bit in relation to the foil, and when it does that, it generates another signal. When it does that, it causes interference. So that's a problem. So what you want and this is why they like the corrugated cables, because there's only one metal on there. There's nothing to do against anything else. The only problem they can have with the corrugated cable is if the connector moves against the shield. So what's LMRSW? How is that different? Well, instead of having the aluminum foil and the braid, we have a smooth aluminum tube that's over the dielectric. So you've still got the same center conductor, the same insulation, but there's an aluminum tube over the dielectric instead of the foil and the braid. Okay, and outside there's just a regular jacket. Now, I mean, the first thing you notice with this cable is, we say it's flexible, but that's all relative. If you take this cable and you bend it, compared to a regular LMR cable, I mean, you see it's a lot stiffer. But if the concern is getting rid of interference at a cell site, then they don't really have a choice. They have to go with something like this. Now, we have a competitor that makes a cable like this. Okay, it's CommScope. CommScope bought Andrew a couple of years ago. And CommScope makes a cable like this that's got an aluminum outer conductor also. But the difference between their outer conductor and our outer conductor is the way that they make their cable is they take an aluminum sheet, and it's literally folded over that polyethylene foam core, and then they weld it at the seam. Okay, so ours is made differently. What we do is we take the foam core, we get a very, very, very long aluminum tube, pull the core into the tube, and then we draw the tube down over the core. So the way that we differ from their cable is we have no seam at all. There's no seam there. Okay. So now with the seam, you always have the risk of having a pinhole in the seam at the weld. You run the risk of that seam failing if it wasn't welded properly. And you don't have the same mechanical structural integrity all the way around the cable, because at the weld it's going to be a little bit stronger than it is going to be around the rest of the cable. So when you bend this thing, it might be prone to flattening in a certain direction, whereas our cable is structurally uniform all the way.
For more information about CDM electronics, products, and services, email our sales department at sales@cdmelectronics.com or call toll-free 877-386-8200.